America has always been exceptional at building dreams, and nowhere is that more visible than in its vacation destinations. Places engineered to make ordinary people feel extraordinary for a weekend, a week, a summer. Grand boardwalks, neon strips, mountain towns, barrier islands.
Tourism to the U.S. is on the decline.
They were the reward at the end of the long work year. But here's what nobody put in the brochure. Dreams have shelf lives. Today, we're looking at 10 of America's most famous vacation destinations, places that were once icons, and what has quietly, sometimes painfully, happened to them. This isn't a celebration of decline. It's an honest look at how places change, why they struggle, and what it means when the version of a place that lives in the national memory no longer matches what you'd find if you actually showed up. If this kind of story hits different for you, real, documented, no fluff, hit subscribe. New videos drop regularly, and every one of them is worth your time. 1. Atlantic City, New Jersey. There's a phrase that has followed Atlantic City for decades now, America's playground. And for most of the 20th century, that phrase fit. The boardwalk stretched more than 4 miles along the Jersey Shore. Grand hotels, saltwater taffy stands, rolling chairs pushed by attendants in white uniforms. For generations of East Coast families, Atlantic City wasn't a vacation. It was the vacation. Then the slide began. After World War II, Americans with new access to cars and affordable air travel started looking elsewhere. By the 1970s, parts of the city had deteriorated badly. The 1976 legalization of casino gambling was supposed to reverse all of that. For a while, it looked like it might. Heather Perez, an archivist at the Atlantic City Free Public Library, described the early casino era this way. The boardwalk was filled with these lines, and one by one, the casinos popped up along the beach. The crowds came, the money came, but the benefits never spread beyond the casino floors. Then, in 2006, Pennsylvania legalized gambling. Casinos opened across the Northeast. The geographic monopoly Atlantic City had held for decades evaporated overnight. By 2014, 5 of the city's 12 casinos had closed. The Revel, which had cost $2.4 billion to build, went bankrupt after just 2 years of operation. Taxable gambling revenue collapsed from $20.5 billion in 2010 to $7.3 billion by 2015. The situation in 2024 told its own story. Collective gross operating profits for Atlantic City's 9 remaining casinos dropped more than 9%, from $744.7 million. In 2023, down to $675.1 million. 7 of the 9 properties saw their profitability shrink. Brick-and-mortar casino revenue from slots and table games declined another 1.1% to $2.81 billion. The industry's own president called the 2024 results very disappointing. And while there are real revitalization efforts underway, a Stockton University satellite campus, a Hard Rock hotel that opened in 2018, ongoing beach replenishment, the fundamental structural challenge hasn't changed. Atlantic City bet everything on a single industry in a market that got saturated. And the community outside the casino corridors never built the kind of diversified tourism infrastructure that might have cushioned the fall. Walking through much of the city today, away from the casino strips, means encountering blocks of boarded-up buildings and the kind of vacancy that doesn't suggest a temporary downturn. It suggests a structural one. 2. Niagara Falls, New York. Let's get this out of the way immediately. The falls themselves are still magnificent, one of the great natural spectacles on the continent, capable of reducing even a seasoned traveler to slack-jawed silence. That part hasn't changed. The problem is everything around the American side. Niagara Falls, New York, the city adjacent to the state park, has spent decades in a long, painful decline that has essentially nothing to do with the waterfall and everything to do with the collapse of the industrial economy that once supported it. At its peak, the city had over 100,000 residents. Today, that number sits below 50,000. 1 in 5 residents lives below the poverty line. Half of housing lots are vacant or in disrepair. The falls draw millions of visitors annually. But most of them visit the state park, look at the water, maybe take the Maid of the Mist boat tour, and then cross the Rainbow Bridge into Ontario. Because on the Canadian side, a full resort city has been built. Hotels, restaurants, a casino, a Ferris wheel. The American side, by contrast, offers the waterfall and very little else to make visitors stay. As one local publication described it, after tourists see the mighty falls, there is not much else for them to see in the city, and they don't stay around long. The result is a destination where the natural wonder is world-class, and the surrounding city is a cautionary tale. And in 2025, cross-border tourism took another hit. Canadian visitor return trips to the United States fell more than 25%, a sharp blow to a region that had always depended on the fluid movement of people across that bridge. What was once a honeymoon capital for generations of American couples now struggles to hold visitors long enough to matter economically. 3. Myrtle Beach, South Carolina. Myrtle Beach is an interesting case because its biggest problem in 2025 might not be crime. It might be the reputation for crime from years ago. Here's what actually happened. Between 2015 and 2024, violent crime in Myrtle Beach dropped nearly 47.5%, from 4,993 reported incidents down to 2,578. The police department invested in surveillance technology, acoustic gunshot detection systems, and genuine community policing. By 2024, the city's crime rate was at a 6-year low. That's real. That's a decade of sustained, documented improvement. The problem is that reputations, especially bad ones, travel faster and stick longer than the data that contradicts them. The Murder Beach label still circulates on Reddit threads and in the casual shorthand people use when planning summer vacations. And no police chief's press release reaches all of those people. So what's left is a city that did something genuinely difficult, substantially reduced crime over nearly a decade, but still bears the reputational cost of what it used to be. And there are legitimate ongoing concerns that have nothing to do with reputation. Beach erosion along the Grand Strand is persistent and expensive. Short-term rental development has changed residential neighborhoods. The built environment away from the resort strips features aging strip malls, closing chain restaurants, and half-empty parking lots. The hallmarks of a place that grew fast and unevenly and is now managing the maintenance costs of that growth. Myrtle Beach isn't disappearing, but it's caught between a past it can't quite shake and a future it hasn't yet fully built. 4. Gatlinburg, Tennessee. Gatlinburg was supposed to be the quiet mountain town at the edge of Great Smoky Mountains National Park, the place you stop before or after a hike. Fudge, mountain air, maybe a night at a cabin. For a long time, that's exactly what it was. The Smokies remain the most visited national park in the United States, drawing over 13 million visitors annually. That number brought enormous amounts of money to the region. It also brought traffic jams that stretch for miles, a main strip so dense with escape rooms, pancake houses, and novelty restaurants that the mountains feel like a background detail, and a development pace that locals themselves have described as having gone well past the point of no return. Locals often say the focus has shifted away from the mountains themselves. The town experience can feel crowded and commercialized, making it harder to find the quiet, nature-first atmosphere that once defined Gatlinburg's appeal. A 2016 wildfire killed 14 people and destroyed more than 2,400 structures. The town rebuilt, which speaks to genuine community resilience. But the rebuild happened largely in the same direction it had already been heading. More development, more attractions, more traffic. By 2025, tourism tax data from the area showed visitor numbers essentially flat. As Pigeon Forge's director of tourism, Leon Downey, put it, "They are concerned about the uncertainty of the economy, but we're flat basically in Pigeon Forge right now. Flat is the new good. Flat is the new good." That's a sentence that tells a story all by itself. The problem with Gatlinburg isn't that it failed. It's that in succeeding so aggressively at becoming a mass tourism destination, it lost the thing that made people want to come in the first place. The mountains haven't changed. The town in front of them barely resembles what it used to be. 5. Las Vegas, Nevada. This is where the story gets uncomfortable for the city that built its entire identity on the premise that the good times never stop. Las Vegas recorded 38.5 million visitors in 2025, according to the Las Vegas Convention and Visitors Authority, the lowest annual total since 2010 outside of the COVID years. Overall visitation fell 7.5% in a single year, the largest overall decline in 50 years outside of the pandemic. Hotel occupancy dropped more than 3 percentage points. For a city where the entire economic model depends on volume, that kind of drop lands hard. Part of this was external and acute. Canadian visitors to Las Vegas declined approximately 24% in 2025. The numbers from the airports are stark. Air Canada passenger traffic to Harry Reid International fell 33% in a single month. WestJet dropped 31%. Budget carrier Flair saw a stunning 62% decline. Canadian tourists, who numbered roughly 1.5 million annually and contributed an estimated $3.6 billion to the Southern Nevada economy, essentially began a boycott, citing trade tensions and political friction with the United States. Las Vegas Mayor Shelley Berkeley stood at a press conference and delivered a message that would have been unthinkable a decade ago. As the mayor of Las Vegas, I'm telling everybody in Canada, please come. We love you, we need you, and we miss you. But the international story, while real, obscures a longer-running domestic problem that Las Vegas created for itself. Over the course of a decade, the city systematically priced out the kind of visitor it was originally built for. Resort fees, daily charges layered on top of room rates, became standard at virtually every Strip property, adding $30 to $60 per night. Parking, which was free at major casinos for decades, became paid. Entertainment costs climbed to where a single concert can run several $100s per person. Buffets, the institution that made Las Vegas famous as a place where ordinary people could feel like royalty for a weekend, mostly disappeared, replaced by celebrity chef restaurants at full celebrity chef prices. The cumulative effect: a city that once welcomed a gambler with $300 and sent them home, having had a genuinely good time, now extracts that $300 in fees and incidentals before they even sit down at a table. In September 2025, Las Vegas ran its first ever citywide promotional sale specifically designed to win back disillusioned visitors. That a city which built its identity on perpetual good times needed to run a sale is, in itself, a statement. That one hit hard. If you're finding value in this breakdown, dropping a like takes 2 seconds and genuinely helps the channel. 6. Branson, Missouri. Branson built its identity on country music, family entertainment, and affordability. And for decades, that formula worked remarkably well. By 2022, the city had set a record of approximately 10.2 million visitors. For a town of roughly 12,000 permanent residents, that's an extraordinary achievement. By 2024, the cracks were showing. The city's annual tourism tax revenue fell 2.5% compared to 2023, ending a streak of consecutive record years. Theater revenues, the historically strongest category and the core of Branson's identity, fell 9.9% for the year. January 2025 saw the city's sales tax revenue decline 11.5% from the same month in 2024. The deeper problem isn't a single bad year, it's structural. The average Branson visitor is drawn from within 300 miles and skews older. As that core audience ages and younger generations show less interest in live country music theater as a default vacation format, the pipeline of new visitors hasn't kept pace. And there's an off-season reality that rarely makes it into the tourism brochures. When the season ends, Branson essentially shuts down. Each winter, the city faces low-paying seasonal wages, high unemployment, no reliable public transportation, and a shortage of roughly 1,300 affordable housing units. During peak summer months, some food banks in the area serve around 100 households per day. When the tourists leave and winter settles in, that number climbs to 150, in a city of 12,000 permanent residents. A place that looks prosperous in summer and feels hollowed out once the visitors leave. 7. Miami Beach, Florida. South Beach has been one of the most photographed vacation destinations in the country since the 1980s. The Art Deco architecture, the turquoise water, the nightlife, the energy. For decades, It drew an international crowd unlike almost anywhere else in America. But 2025 brought a sharp decline in the international visitors who had historically defined Miami's tourism economy. Canadian arrivals dropped between 13 and 21% depending on the month. Florida overall saw Canadian visitation fall roughly 15.5% in the first 9 months of the year. The issues in Miami Beach go deeper than one difficult year. The city has been wrestling for years with severe spring break overcrowding, to the point that South Beach implemented a midnight curfew and restricted beach alcohol sales after years of increasingly violent incidents. Those measures have frustrated nightlife businesses that depend on late-night revenue. It's a tension without a clean resolution. And then there's the water, not in the pools, on the streets. Miami Beach is more acutely than almost any developed coastal city in the United States on the front lines of sea level rise. Streets in parts of South Beach flood at high tide even without rain, a phenomenon so routine that the city has spent over $600 million on pump systems and raised roadways to manage what locals now casually call sunny day flooding. The city has issued over $1.5 billion in bonds for sea level rise adaptation projects, and engineers estimate the city will need to raise roads and infrastructure across vast stretches of the island over the coming decades. For a city whose entire brand is built on glamour and effortless beauty, the unglamorous reality of managing a sinking coastline is a tension that isn't going away. 8. Sedona, Arizona. Sedona didn't decline because it failed. It declined because it succeeded, completely and without restraint. The red rock formations, the vortex sites, the spiritual retreat culture, the galleries and spa weekends. Sedona built a reputation over decades as a place offering something genuinely rare in the American Southwest. Natural beauty so extreme it felt almost deliberate, combined with a small-town atmosphere that made it feel accessible. People came, told others, came back. Then social media arrived and put the place on a global map it had never asked to be on. Today, Sedona draws more than 3 million visitors per year to a permanent population of just under 10,000 people. That's roughly 300 visitors for every resident. On peak spring weekends, Cathedral Rock and Bell Rock trailheads fill before sunrise. The roads gridlock for hours. The Forest Service has implemented parking reservation systems at the most overwhelmed sites, not because they want to control access, but because the alternative is people parking illegally along highway shoulders and hiking in through active traffic. The housing picture is where the real damage is. Short-term vacation rentals have consumed approximately 12% of Sedona's total housing stock. The people who staff the hotels, cook in the restaurants, lead the yoga retreats, and maintain the trails can no longer afford to live in the town their labor makes functional. They commute from Cottonwood or Camp Verde, half an hour away. A 2022 resident sentiment survey found that 80% of Sedona respondents wanted the town to focus on managing existing tourism rather than growing it further. The town's own residents were asking for their city back. The irony is that the more people heard the message and believed it, the more thoroughly the thing being sold was destroyed in the selling. 9. The Florida Keys. The Florida Keys are one of the genuinely singular places in the United States. A string of islands connected by the overseas highway. Shallow turquoise water. Some of the best diving and snorkeling in the country. A culture and atmosphere that doesn't quite exist anywhere else. They are also eroding, flooding, and becoming progressively harder for anyone except the wealthy to access. Hurricane Irma in 2017 was a devastating blow that destroyed or severely damaged tens of thousands of structures. The recovery was slow and uneven, and reconstruction costs drove property values to levels that have made long-term residency nearly impossible for working-class islanders. Teachers, restaurant workers, and service employees frequently commute from as far as Homestead on the mainland, a round trip of over 80 miles, because they can no longer afford to live where they work. And then, there's the reef. Florida's coral reef, part of the third largest barrier reef system in the world, has lost over 90% of its coral cover since the 1970s due to warming ocean temperatures, disease outbreaks, and water quality issues. The 2023 marine heat wave in Florida Bay saw water temperatures reaching 100 degrees Fahrenheit, almost certainly a world record for ocean water, causing mass coral bleaching events that took years of reef recovery with them. For visitors who come to the Keys specifically to dive or snorkel the reef, the experience has changed significantly from what travel brochures still describe. The fish are still there, the scenery is still extraordinary, but the reef itself, the reason the Keys developed as a vacation destination in the first place, is in a state of crisis. Meanwhile, a week in Key West now costs roughly as much as a comparable trip to the Caribbean, without the Caribbean's intact reefs. That's a value proposition that is increasingly difficult to justify. 10. Galveston, Texas. The seawall is the key to understanding Galveston. After the 1900 hurricane, still the deadliest natural disaster in United States history, killing more than 8,000 people, the city made a collective decision to stay. It raised the grade of the entire island by dredging sand. It built a 17-foot seawall along the Gulf side. It was one of the great engineering achievements of its era, and it gave Galveston a second life. What it also gave Galveston was a confidence in its own permanence that the geography of a narrow barrier island off the Texas coast probably doesn't fully warrant. The seawall protects the beach-facing side. It doesn't protect the bay side, where most flooding from major storms actually enters. It covers a portion of the shoreline. It is aging infrastructure in an era of rising seas and intensifying Gulf storms. And it encouraged decades of development. Victorian homes, resort hotels, the historic Strand District. On a piece of land the Gulf of Mexico is slowly, measurably reclaiming. The island draws more than 8 million visitors per year. The overwhelming majority are day trippers from the Houston metro area who come for the beach, eat lunch, and leave before dinner. Day trippers spend less per visit than overnight guests, generate enormous wear on roads and beach infrastructure, and then leave with their wallets. The businesses and workers who keep Galveston running face months each year without reliable income. In a city where housing costs rose sharply after Hurricane Harvey in 2017, the physical infrastructure away from the tourist-facing Strand reflects years of deferred maintenance on a seasonal budget. The island has survived before. The seawall has held. But the version of Galveston that exists today is built on a foundation that keeps asking to be taken on faith. And faith in barrier islands is a resource that climate change is steadily drawing down. Some of these places are fighting back. Some are reinventing themselves. Some are genuinely fading in ways that will be very hard to reverse. What they all have in common is this: the version of them that lives in the popular imagination. The postcard, the travel brochure, the memory from a childhood road trip often doesn't match what you'd actually find if you showed up today. America's vacation landscape has always evolved. Destinations rise, peak, and sometimes fall into something unrecognizable. These 10 are at various points along that arc, and where they end up will depend as much on the decisions made by local governments, developers, and communities over the next decade as on any single external force. Here's a question worth dropping in the comments below. Have you visited any of these places recently? Did it match what you remembered or expected? Somewhere in an attic right now, there's a photo album. Yellowed edges, Polaroids of kids eating saltwater taffy on a boardwalk, a honeymoon couple in front of Niagara Falls, a family crammed into a Vegas buffet booth laughing. These weren't just vacations. They were the places America built its summers around. Some of them are still standing. But if you showed up today, you might not recognize them. I'm Channel Name, and this is the real story of 10 famous American vacation spots slowly being abandoned. The signs were there long before anyone wanted to see them, and the places that avoid this fate are the ones that ask hard questions before they're forced to. If you found this one worth your time, the like button is right there. It genuinely helps. Subscribe if you haven't yet, and I'll see you in the next one.